Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company on the 440 Sports Network, presented by Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical on YouTube at Stillman & Co. Again, like and subscribe. Tell all your friends. If you were watching earlier today, like and subscribe. Hit the notifications button so that whenever we go live, like when we went live at 10 a.m. this morning, that way, if there's news to be had, you will get the notification. We are on. Here we go. Let's do it. Again, as we are in the middle of Coach Watch 2026. Again, like and subscribe. Turn on those notifications. We'll have a ton of off-season content even once Matt Nagy is hired as the Tennessee Titans head coach. And that is where we start with this afternoon, today's program. The finalist for the Titans coaching search is set. The finalists: Matt Nagy, the Chiefs offensive coordinator; Jeff Hafley, the Packers defensive coordinator; and Robert Saleh, the former head coach of the New York Jets, who is now the defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers, are your three finalists. Robert Saleh hasn't even had his first interview, and he is a finalist. More on that in a bit. And reality is starting to set in for you people, Titans fans, that Matt Nagy is going to be the next head coach of the Titans. Again, this is a duck theory show. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, chances are it's a duck. I think there are very few Titan fans at this point that think that there is an alternative that actually makes sense. The alternative to Matt Nagy being the next head coach of the Titans. Let's start with the fact that when it comes to Jeff Hafley, he's going to the Dolphins, who just hired a general manager from Green Bay and is in their building today. Let's follow that up with the fact that the Titans have never even actually interviewed Robert Saleh, yet he's a finalist for the job. And what most people covering the team are insinuating is that the Titans don't think they can get Sean McDermott, or it's too late in the process. TD earlier today tweeting out, while Sean McDermott would be the best option, with it being so late in the process, the Titans could be playing with fire if they pivot to him and he decides not to be their head coach. The decision will still likely come down to Matt Nagy or Robert Saleh. So TD is saying, hey, I know a lot of you people want McDermott, but the team thinks, hey, we're so far down the road on this front, and we are so ready to go with whomever we're going to hire that we can't really risk losing the guy that we want by going after Sean McDermott. Like somebody else is going to hire Matt Nagy. So, again, Jeff Hafley's probably going to take the Dolphins job. They've never actually interviewed Robert Saleh. In fact, I have to wonder, have they ever met Robert Saleh? I don't know. And apparently they think it's too late in the process to go after Sean McDermott. So that leaves Matt Nagy. And Titan fans hate it. Hate. And I'll say this. I understand why Titan fans hate it. Titan fans are entitled to hate it. You're allowed to hate it. Even if personally, I don't necessarily hate the hiring of Matt Nagy. But boy, the mood in Titanland over the last 48 hours has been somber. Woo! Now, I want to reiterate again for everybody. I don't necessarily hate the potential Matt Nagy hire. In fact, I think there are a couple of positives to bringing in Matt Nagy, for which I will get to in a second. But I know that the masses, you people, hate Matt Nagy. I saw a poll yesterday that was between Matt Nagy and Robert Saleh, and 80% of the people picked Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh was horseshit as the head coach of the Jets. And yet 80% of the people would rather have Robert Saleh than Matt Nagy. So I know there's probably a Titan fan out there that's like, I wouldn't hate Matt Nagy, but I know that most of you people absolutely despise the idea of Matt Nagy being the next coach of the Titans. Again, I think you're allowed to feel that way. I think what Titan fans are really upset about is I think they feel lied to. I think they feel like the organization lied to them about going through a real, true, exhaustive coaching search. This football team, which has switched out its top decision maker in football over the last 4 years each time, and has finished with the worst record in all of ball over the last 2 years, has a quarterback that they drafted number 1 overall who desperately needs to be rescued from this abomination of a franchise. And the team has orchestrated a search to hire a guy that brings in zero excitement and zero hope. That is, for fans, a real bummer. And that's the Titans' fault that it got to this point. Again, I don't think it really matters. This is my opinion personally. I don't really give a shit what the fans think when it comes to hiring a coach, because I've seen fan bases demand that a team hire a specific coach. They hire the coach, he stinks, and they're equally as mad at the people that hired him 2 years down the road. I've seen teams sell out season tickets for the excitement of this new coach, and that new coach go on to suck and be fired again within 2 years. So I don't really care about that. But I know you do. And I know you just want hope. And I know you just want to believe. And I know that you just want there to be something when it comes to the Titans coaching search. And you were promised an exhaustive coaching search. And it's going to end up being Matt Nagy, who, again, you could have hired whenever you wanted to. The Titans fired Brian Callahan on October 13th of 2025. That was 98 days ago. They promised a grueling search that would leave no stone unturned. Chad Brinker held a press conference. He bragged about how many collective Super Bowls their executive decision-making committee, which, by the way, that's a total crock of shit. Well, you know, we up here, we've got 13 Super Bowls amongst us. Yeah? When you were a scout with the Packers and they won a title under Mike McCarthy, how much of a role did you play? Probably not that big of a role. Now, apparently, he's more important than Mike McCarthy, who can't even be a finalist. But they bragged about how many collective Super Bowls their decision-making process had. And that this, again, the firing of Brian Callahan, was going to lead to an exhaustive coaching search that would get the Titans. And they said this, not me. A coach that will build a team that they can be proud of. That's what they promised everybody. And again, it's ending with what feels like a convenient hiring. Matt Nagy, the guy from the Chiefs. It would be like me buying the team and becoming the owner of the Tennessee Titans and immediately hiring Josh Hurd, the athletic director at Louisville, who I have known since I was 19 years old and was like an older brother to me in college, to be the team president. Burke, you're out. Josh, you're in. And you people would say, well, that's just Jared's buddy from college. And the truth is, you would be right. But there's a difference between me and the Titans and how I do business. Because I wouldn't try to trick you into thinking that I did something when really I was doing the opposite. And I think that's really the crux of the issue with the Titans. They are always worried about the optics. They are always worried about the narrative. The Titans for years have focused on things that don't matter as opposed to really focusing on the things that do matter. That needs to stop. It looks to all of us like the Titans are going to hire Matt Nagy. It looks like their plan was to hire Matt Nagy all along. It looks like there are far more accomplished coaches that are available for the Titans to hire than Matt Nagy, like a Mike McCarthy or even Jason Garrett. Now, again, I'm not saying they should hire Jason Garrett, but Jason Garrett is more accomplished than Matt Nagy. It looks like John Harbaugh, Kevin Stefanski, and right now Jeff Hafley never really had any interest in the Titans, but had real interest in using the Titans in order to land the job on the terms that they wanted. And all in all, it looks bad. And the only reason it looks this way is because everybody over there is afraid of just admitting the truth and moving on. Again, year after year after year, the Titans seem to tell us one thing and then go out and do the exact opposite. And that's my issue. Do you want to hire Matt Nagy? Then just go fucking do it and explain why. Have a press conference. Hey, Matt Nagy was 34-31 in Chicago, and Chicago was a tough place to win. And he got the most out of the quarterbacks he had there, and we feel like Cam is better than those guys, with all due respect to them, Trubisky and Fields. Matt was instrumental in the plan that we put together in Kansas City to help support Patrick. And upon returning to Kansas City in 2022, Matt was an integral part of blah, 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 whatever. Just get up there and tell the fans, I believe in the fucking guy and I'm hiring him. Just do it and then be done. But instead, the Titans had to do we interviewed everybody and he's the best guy out there. Trust me, this is gonna work. And again, at the end of the day, that's the problem with the Titans. Nobody has the authority in the organization to say what it's going to be. To just say, hey, fans, we're going to hire Matt Nagy because we really believe in Matt Nagy. They don't have the authority to do that. There's one person who has the authority over there to do something like that, and that woman is allergic to a microphone because she got burned by a popular asshole head coach whom she didn't manage correctly, and quite frankly, she knows it. She got burned when she sat down with Mike Keith and she told the fans, we've got Rand, we've got a young quarterback, we've got cap space, and you'll never hear from her again until things get good. But Mike Borgonzi doesn't have the authority to sit down in front of you all and just say, I'm hiring Matt Nagy because I believe in Matt Nagy. No. Instead, it has to be this whole dog and pony show of me and Chad Brinker and Reggie McKenzie and Dave Ziegler and some other guy named Dave who's got 16 years of experience with the fucking Browns. We got together and we put our heads together and we used every algorithm out there and we spit it all out and we broke it all down and we watched the tape and we and we ended up with the great Matt Nagy as our head coach. He can't do that. He cannot just tell you the truth. He has to, again, dog and pony show. We interviewed everybody. We interviewed Jason Garrett. Because at the end of the day, Mike Borgonzi does not feel like he has the authority to tell you, guys, I believe in him. Get on board. So he and his cohorts formed this long, drawn-out process that instead of just going from point A to point B and getting on with your life and going on and figuring out your coaching staff and what your plan for Cam is and everything else, no. We got to interview every Billy Bob out there who would be willing to interview for the job. They got their fans excited about the possibility of John Harbaugh, when that was never going to happen. And now they're left with a guy who I think is most remembered for having BU in giant block letters on his giant play sheet when he was the head coach in Chicago, and is now doing a bunch of redemption interviews professing that his biggest failing was he wasn't enough of himself in his first go-round. Go figure. And the truth when it comes to Matt Nagy is this. Matt Nagy, the optics of hiring Matt Nagy could not be worse. For starters, nobody else wants to hire him. This is not a, wow, there are 8 jobs, 9 jobs, however many jobs, what is it, 10 now? There are 10 jobs that are open, and 7 of them want Matt Nagy. Again, that doesn't matter, because in 2018, when the Titans were looking for a coach, the Colts didn't want Mike Vrabel, and the Lions didn't want Mike Vrabel, and nobody else apparently wanted Mike Vrabel, and it didn't matter because you got Mike Vrabel, and Mike Vrabel was a good coach. But again, these are optics. Nobody else wants to hire Matt Nagy. The Chiefs are not bringing him back as offensive coordinator. That is the thing that I think, again, goes without saying. It feels like Andy Reid, Mahomes sat down with CBS. They did the whole, you need to go hire Matt Nagy. He needs to be your coach, dog and pony show, because they feel like they need new blood in their operation. I think Nagy feels like he probably, again, Nagy gets all the blame for everything that goes wrong in Kansas City and gets none of the credit. So maybe he feels like he needs to go somewhere else. And yet, again, kind of the underlying thing that nobody really wants to say out loud, the Chiefs aren't bringing him back as offensive coordinator. The Chiefs had their worst offensive season in a decade. Every other finalist that is a candidate for the Titans job pulled out of the running or is, in Jeff Hafley's case, probably going to take the Dolphins job, so we don't consider him serious anyways. And at the end of the day, Mike Vrabel is in the AFC Championship game. So again, not that I think optics matter when it comes to hiring a coach, because I don't. All I think that matters is that you get the right coach. I don't even know what the optics were when Indiana hired Kurt Signetti, but he's a great coach. So at the end, who cares? But the optics for Nagy could not be worse. Nobody else wants to hire him. The Chiefs aren't bringing him back as offensive coordinator. The Chiefs had their worst season in a decade. Every other finalist used the Titans for leverage or is using the Titans for leverage. The only other finalist hasn't even interviewed for the job, and Mike Vrabel is in the AFC Championship game. So the Titans decided to launch a full-blown search that now doesn't feel like a search. It feels like a sham. And their fans are pissed about it. And I'll be honest, I think you have every right to be pissed. Remember, I asked Matt Nagy, I asked Mike Borgonzi last week. I asked him straight up about Matt Nagy because I knew the fans did not think that Matt Nagy was a good coach. So I said, the perception of Matt Nagy is he's not a very good coach. But you know Matt Nagy. We don't know Matt Nagy. And he said, hey, Matt Nagy's a good coach, did good things in Chicago. He came back to Kansas City, he did good things. But even then, when you know a guy like that, you still got to do your research. To which I said at the time, that's bullshit. You don't have to do your research. You know everything about this guy. Now, you might need to do research on other candidates, but you don't need to do research on a guy you've worked with for a decade. Sorry. You should know whether or not the guy could be a good coach. I don't have to do any research to tell you who at 1025 can host a radio show and who can't. And that's why Titan fans are mad. Because, again, they feel like they got lied to. And if it ends up being as simple as it was going to be Nagy the whole time, well, then I hate to say it, they kind of did. So I get why you feel the way you feel. I'm just not surprised by any of it, so I'm not angry. And I'm not totally against Nagy. And there's one reason in particular that I'm not totally against Nagy, which I'll get to. But I do want to get to, speaking of lying and speaking of research, I do want to get to the Robert Saleh thing here for a second. Can we talk about his candidacy for this job and how all of a sudden he's a finalist for the job? Now, let me start off the Saleh discussion by saying I don't know Robert Saleh from a jar of Vicks. Robert Saleh could be the greatest leader in the history of football, and Woody Johnson and Aaron Rodgers and Joe Douglas and everybody else in New York could have just made it a total nightmare that not even Bill Belichick wanted to coach back in the 90s. But Robert Saleh's resume right now, so what I do know of Robert Saleh, it's pretty terrible. 20-36, no playoff appearances, busted with the number 2 pick at quarterback, and at times was kind of a clown with the Jets. Robert Saleh called a meeting in which he told the coaches, who's the leaker? If you come forward now, I promise you won't get in trouble. I would have loved to have been in that meeting, by the way. Todd Downing and Keith Carter in there. All right, guys. Who's the leaker? Somebody just tell me who's the leaker. Yeah, I promise you won't get in trouble. It's like, so that guy's supposed to raise his hand and say, hey, I'm the leaker. I'm the guy who's going to Rossini and telling her that this organization's a total shit show. Okay, well, you're not in trouble. We'll all trust you still. So, again, there was some real clown shit that went on there. Now, there's a lot of clown shit that goes on with the Jets that has nothing to do with Robert Saleh. It's still a clown show. But again, his resume says he sucks. So he has this terrible resume. And they haven't even interviewed him. And yet he's a finalist. And at the same time, Mike McCarthy, who, I'm sorry, he had 2 interviews with the team. I know there's all this semantics about whether or not it was 1 interview or 2 interviews. Easton reported they went out to Wisconsin and they had dinner with him, Brinker and Borgonzi. That's an interview. That's not buddies catching up to go out for drinks. That's an interview. And then they had him in the building for the entire day. That's an interview. So they had 2 interviews, 2 meetings with Big Mike, who wins 61% of the time, who won a Super Bowl, who was able to deal with the same quarterback that Robert Saleh couldn't handle in New York and was in the playoffs as recently as 2 years ago. And he's not a finalist, but Robert Saleh, who they never interviewed and who none of them have ever worked with, is all of a sudden a finalist? Not one of those guys on the Titans search committee, the executive committee with those 38 Super Bowls that Chad Brinker brags about, has ever crossed paths with Robert Saleh. And yet they tell the local media the Titans feel very comfortable in their research to go ahead and deem that Saleh is a finalist for the job. That does not pass the smell test. That sounds like total and complete bullshit. And this is what I think happened. And again, I'm using the duck theory here when it comes to what happened as far as why Robert Saleh, who again never interviewed for this job, is a finalist for it. The Titans, again, in what is a sham search, the Titans can't have finalists and then lose Stefanski to Atlanta and then lose Jeff Hafley to Miami and then be left with one guy. So they already set themselves up when they said, we're not going to have a bunch of finalists for this job. We're going to interview every Tom, Dick, and Harry, but then we're not going to have a whole bunch of finalists. 3 to 4 finalists, 5 max. Then they tell everybody Saturday it's Stefanski, Hafley, and Nagy. And then Stefanski takes the Falcon job. So now you're down to 2. Hafley, it looks like, is going to take the Dolphin job. So now you're down to 1. So you can't have a whole second round of finalists with 1 finalist. That is, unless you're the Patriots and you know who you're going to hire and you don't care about telling everybody that you know who you're going to hire. So once they realized they were left with what feels like 1 actual finalist, they just took the guy that they were supposed to interview on Zoom, and they're just going to get him to waste his time to come in for an interview as a finalist. So it looks like they're actually considering other options. Again, the whole dog and pony show, horse shit that you don't need. And I cannot believe that anyone would actually believe that in a process where everybody gets an interview, that Robert Saleh is skipping to the front of the line because he's such a great candidate based on his reputation. Or I should say, their research. Again, it's Robert Saleh. It's not Bill Walsh. That's the second thing. So I yesterday, when it came out that, yeah, they're going to go ahead and instead of Zooming with Saleh tonight, Saleh's going to fly to Nashville, and tomorrow afternoon he's going to be interviewed in person, and he's a finalist. I thought, oh, God, talk about covering your ass. This is because, again, they thought this week they were going to get to interview Stefanski, and they were going to get to interview Hafley, and they were going to get to interview Saleh. And, again, think about the timing. It was supposed to be Stefanski on Sunday, Nagy on Monday, Hafley on Tuesday. Stefanski goes to Atlanta on Saturday. Hafley is with the Dolphins right now. He could sign immediately and be their next coach. And then you had this whole second round of interviews planned out. And now there's nobody except for the one guy, Matt Nagy, that nobody wanted. So you have to do something. So what they did was they convinced Robert Saleh to fly his ass in town. That's it. You can't be a finalist for a job where everybody has to interview, including Mike McCarthy, and be considered a real threat for the job when you haven't even interviewed or worked with any of these people before. That's unbelievable. So that's the second thing. They did their research. See, that's what bothers me. And I like Paul, and I know Paul, like, I think deep down inside, Paul likes me. I think Paul sometimes, gets, I don't know if jealous is the right word, but insecure. He wants to be the only sheriff in town who has a strong opinion or whatever. And I understand that a reporter's job is to report. But when Paul's out there saying, like, they feel confident in their research, they're going to make Robert Saleh a finalist, I'm like, God, that is such bullshit. And all of us with a brain know that's bullshit. The math doesn't math. So there you go on that second thing. Now, the third thing is Matt Nagy. And I just want to hit on this when it comes to Matt Nagy. Poor Matt Nagy. Hated before he even gets hired. And let me say this fan base, not everybody, but most of you hate Matt Nagy. And that's okay. You're entitled to your opinion. I don't think it's necessarily fair. I mean, again, the guy did go over 500 and make the playoffs twice in 4 tries with Justin Fields and Mitch Trubisky starting 88% of the time. And both of those guys fucking stink. Now, there can be an argument that's made that those guys stink because Matt Nagy didn't do a very good job of coaching them. And I don't know what to make of that, but again, it depends on how you feel. But I am actually thankful that Matt Nagy is hated by this fan base. And I am going to tell you why. Because when they do hire Matt Nagy, everybody will be on the same clock. This has been a problem with this organization. It's always coach over here, general manager over here, quarterback over here. And finally, it feels like everything's going to all be together at one time. See, if Matt Nagy was a popular hire, if he was Ben Johnson last year, if he was John Harbaugh, he wouldn't be on the same time frame as Cam Ward. John Harbaugh is signing a 5-year, $100 million contract. If Cam Ward were the quarterback for John Harbaugh with that contract, and after a year, John Harbaugh thought Cam Ward wasn't very good, then John Harbaugh would keep his job and Cam Ward wouldn't keep his. But with Matt Nagy, the truth is they could one and done him very easily, and nobody would think twice. So because Matt Nagy is not popular, he gets zero benefit of the doubt. And there is a lot of benefit of the doubt that goes around in Titanland. Rand Carthon got that benefit of the doubt. Brian Callahan got that benefit of the doubt. Mike Vrabel got the benefit of the doubt. Cam Ward even gets the benefit of the doubt. The closest thing to Nagy is Will Levis or Mike Mularkey. Now, in the case of Levis, he didn't really get the benefit of the doubt. Titans fans gave him 5 games in that 2024 season, and we're like, see ya. Because they did not like Levis when he got drafted to the team, showed a little something in 23. Okay, let's see. And then he wasn't good. Kick him to the curb. Mularkey was hated by the fans when he was hired, won a bunch of games, won a playoff game, and still didn't get the benefit of the doubt, which, again, I think is crazy. But think about everybody else. Mike Vrabel got hired to unleash Marcus Mariota because Marcus got the benefit of the doubt. And let me just put my hand in the air. And I know Robbie Stanley's listening right now, and I know he's thinking about me. I gave Marcus the benefit of the doubt. Like I was like, this guy is a franchise quarterback. You will see with Mariota. He's going to be the guy. He's great. Mariota got the benefit of the doubt. Mike Vrabel gets the job. And Mike Vrabel was supposed to coach up Mariota. And a year and a half into Vrabel's tenure as coach, he benches Mariota. Now, Matt Nagy cannot bench Cam Ward. If Matt Nagy were to go to Amy and say midway through next year, I think we need to bench Cam Ward, I think we need to put Tyrod Taylor in there, she's going to fire him. So there's no doing that. They're on the same time frame. Vrabel and Mariota were never on the same time frame. J-Rob did not draft Marcus Mariota. So was he on the same time frame? And then we thought Robinson and Vrabel were on the same timeline when she signed them to matching extensions, and then she turned around and fired Robinson. Then Vrabel's the bad guy in 23, and Rand gets the benefit of the doubt. Well, Vrabel was holding Rand back, which in hindsight is hilarious to think about. And that, by the way, was something that I never argued. I wanted them both gone. But Rand got the benefit of the doubt for the disastrous 23 season. Remember, Andre Dillard was Mike Vrabel's fault, and Skoronski was Mike Vrabel's fault, and I forget what else was Mike Vrabel's fault, but it was all Vrabel's fault, and Rand let him cook. By the way, Kevin Byard, you all told me he was toast, so look at him now. So then the next year, Brian Callahan got the benefit of the doubt because Brian Callahan was popular. Brian Callahan was just as stupid in year one with Will Levis as he was last year with Cam Ward. But he got the benefit of the doubt because he was popular. Well, let's get Callahan a quarterback that he actually, picked instead of Will Levis. I mean, look at the tape, Jared. Callie is getting these guys wide open, and Levis just sucks. Benefit of the doubt to Callahan. Even this year, Mike Borgonzi hit the draft out of the park. No, he drafted a kick returner. Jury's out on Cam. Oladejo didn't play. Winston's hurt. Io Manor's a fourth wide receiver. Helm's a backup tight end. DK is a legit punt returner and I think has the ability to be a number 2 receiver in the NFL. So he got a 4th round receiver. Whoa. But he gets benefit of the doubt. Cam leads the league dead last in QBR. PFF grade says he stinks. Every metric says Tyler Shuck's better than him, and Jackson Dart's better than him, and these other quarterbacks are better than him, but he gets the benefit of the doubt because he's popular. Well, guess what? When they hire Matt Nagy, who is not popular, everybody will be on the same timeline, which means if Cam fails, they fail. And if Cam fails, that means Brinker's gone, Borgonzi's gone, Nagy's gone, Ward's gone. And I actually like this because I am so tired of watching the Titans throw good money after bad. Again, they were so convinced that Rand Carthon was being held back by Mike Vrabel that they let Rand go out there and spend $200 million and draft J.C. Latham in the first round and waste a second-round pick on a lazy fatty in Tavondre Sweat and pick a head coach who they now have to pay. And they threw good money after bad with Callahan by letting them draft a quarterback to a coach who was on the hot seat. Well, guess what? Those days are over because it is Brinker who hired Borgonzi, who drafted Cam and who's going to hire Matt Nagy, and Nagy, whose only job is to coach Cam Ward. If Cam fails, they all fail. And if Cam fails, they're all fired. And there won't be a, well, we need to let Matt Nagy get a quarterback in here that he knows. Nope. Titan fans aren't going to do that because he's not popular. If the Titans hired a popular coach, if the Titans had hired Joe Brady to be their head coach, you would have said, well, we got to give Joe Brady a quarterback that he picks. And you're not going to say that when it comes to Matt Nagy. So those are the first three things when it comes to this, what feels like a sham of a coaching search. And boy, Borgonzi, when it comes to the press conference where they introduced Matt Nagy, after what happened with Harbaugh, after what happened with Stefanski, after just moving Robert Saleh to the front of the line, this is going to be the toughest press conference he's ever faced. Brinker got the barrage, both when they hired Borgonzi and Brinker had that press conference, that meeting in the conference room where we weren't allowed to record any of the audio or the video, or I guess we were allowed to record it. We just weren't allowed to share it because Brinker, again, I don't know what fakakta reason Brinker had. Brinker did not want that to be used against him in a court of law. And then Brinker got pelted at the Brian Callahan firing press conference. Borgonzi, if they hire Nagy, he's going to get it. And I saw Easton put out there yesterday that he knows that he is acutely aware of the fact that Titans fans are not going to like the hiring of Matt Nagy. Well, hey, if he's got the balls to get up in front of everybody and say, hey, I know you people don't like him, but I do, trust me, this is my job. I am paid millions of dollars to make this decision, and this is the guy I believe will lead us there, then more power to him. But he should have done that from the beginning. Not, we interviewed everybody and he's the best. Which, again, I predicted was exactly what was going to happen and was happening here. I do have some Mike Vrabel thoughts as he goes to the AFC Championship game. I do have some playoff thoughts that I want to get to, but let's get to your reaction. Joe says, Mike McCarthy is the old papa that this young team needs. Let me say this on McCarthy. If I had a vote, I think I would vote for McCarthy. Maybe even over Arthur Smith. Because Mike McCarthy has coached at two of the most unique situations in the NFL, Green Bay and Dallas. And Mike McCarthy has had success. Had success in Green Bay, had success in Dallas. How much of that's him? How much of that's everybody else? Again, you can argue either side of the table on that, but that's a lot easier to argue success than trying to argue the blame like Robert Saleh is. Mike McCarthy also does have the skin on the wall that he has won a Super Bowl. as a head coach in this league. That if Mike McCarthy gets the job, he goes into the first meeting and says, I've won a Super Bowl. You haven't. Robert Saleh comes in and goes, I looked like a total ass clown in New York. But for some reason, the Titans just do not like McCarthy. And it's obvious that they don't like McCarthy. I don't know what it is. I don't know McCarthy, but it's obvious that they don't like McCarthy. Brinker had worked with him in Green Bay. Reggie McKenzie worked with him in Green Bay. They flew all the way out to Wisconsin to go meet with him. They met with him. They had dinner with him. They flew him in town, and he's not a finalist. And boy, it would look really bad if they have Jeff Hafley, Matt Nagy, and Robert Saleh as a finalist, Mike McCarthy not as a finalist, and then turn around and hire McCarthy because the fan base convinced them to do that. So, I mean, you may want McCarthy. I'm not against McCarthy, but they're not going to hire McCarthy. Trent says, just waiting for the Nagy announcement. Prefer McDermott or McCarthy? Mick, please. Trent also says, Easton Freeze is convinced it's Nagy. Easton has had some really good reporting over the weekend. I don't know who Easton's sources are, but Easton had the story that the Titans had already met with Mike McCarthy. He had it before Adam Schefter had it. Paul tried to downplay it because either Paul's taking orders from the team or Paul's jealous of the fact that Easton had the scoop. But that was some great reporting by Easton. And Easton, again, had the report that they were out at dinner with Matt Nagy. By the way, I did text Easton last night, and I did guess on the first try which restaurant in town they took Matt Nagy to. Kong says, Matt Nagy did peak Mitchell Trubisky. McDaniels has never truly developed a quarterback. I think you're talking about McDaniel. McDaniels is the OC of New England. McDaniel is the former coach of the Dolphins. Tua was optimized in an offense that was maximized by weapons and speed, something the Titans don't have. I kind of agree with that. I mean, again, when people tell me about the Mike McDaniel play design, oh, Jared, the play design. The play design was so good, Jared. Every time I hear that, I'm like, yes, but I can design plays with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Let's do some, winning. One guy says, did Borgonzi produce the video of Mahomes and Reed praising Nagy? I said last week when I saw that Jonathan Jones was brought into the facility in Kansas City to sit down with Nagy, Andy, and Mahomes. I said I thought that was for an audience of one, Amy. Because I think Borgonzi knows he wants to hire Nagy, and he's just got to get Amy on board. And so, while I don't really care what Patrick Mahomes says, maybe Amy would be like, well, Patrick Mahomes says we should hire Matt Nagy. Maybe that's what works with her. I don't know. MB says, Nagy is a bum. Fans don't have to get on board. I'll cheer for a different team. I've never really thought about that. Like just renouncing my Titans fandom. That's what Robbie Stanley did. He said in 2008, he had enough of Vince Young and Jeff Fisher and said, I'm out. And that's when he became a Green Bay Packer fan. And part of me kind of envies that. There is no team I'd rather root for than the Tennessee Titans. Like, I will tell you, I actually think that I have been depressed. Now, I've had a lot happen in my life the last couple of years. Obviously, having a kid and, changing jobs and all that stuff. But I think the shittiness of the Titans has made me more depressed over the last 2 years because I have been completely re-energized this fall. Like this new year. This fall, I was depressed. And I do wonder if the shittiness of the Titans is having an effect on me like that. Kat says, big nope to Nagy. We've had enough bad seasons. Well, Pac-Man says, we are a bottom feeder organization and it starts at the top. You know what my favorite thing about this is? This past season, when Cam was at the bottom of the league in QBR, and I kept saying, oh, great. I thought he was going to be a bust when they drafted him. They said that they had a plan for him. They didn't have a plan. The plan was, let's put him out there and ruin him, and that's what's happened through the first year. He's already hurt now. They're changing coaches on him. I mean, again, they can say whatever they want to say. Their actions were that of an organization that doesn't know what they're doing. And everybody kept saying to me when I kept saying, like, I just don't see it with Cam. The mechanics aren't very good. The accuracy, in large part because of the mechanics, is not very good. I just don't see it with Cam. And people say, Jared, this coaching staff is so bad, you got to let them go get a coach. This roster is so bad, you got to let them. And I'm like, I hear you. But you do realize that you are banking on a rookie general manager to go out and nail the draft and nail free agency and nail the coaching hire and nail the assistant coaching hires. And the Titans don't have a very good track record recently of being able to do that. And I think in large part, one of the problems is they hired Rand. Why did they hire Rand? The consensus is they hired Rand because the league wanted them to. I don't know if that's true or not. That's the consensus. So then they hired Chad because Rand, who was incompetent, hired Chad. Then they hired Brian. So you've got incompetent, hiring incompetent, hiring incompetent. So then they fire Rand and they promote Chad. So Rand's too stupid to be the general manager, so we're going to take the guy he hired and he'll be in charge. So he hires Mike. Mike is now hiring the coach. So the incompetent general manager hires an assistant general manager who gets promoted and hires a you see what I'm saying here? Like, you're banking on this systemic incompetence to get like 8 things in a row right. When again, even the best general managers don't get 8 things in a row right. And that absolutely starts at the top. Which is just crazy. Woo! For whatever that's worth. Brett goes, I'm starting to think the Titans organization is possibly the last in the league. Our finalists are Nagy and Saleh. I'd say the Raiders are probably right there with you. And then with Cleveland's sneaky. They got a great defense, and the owner spends money. But the owner's a fucking kook and does shit like the Deshaun Watson contract. And so I don't know if it's a good job or not. Want to hit the Vrabel stuff? Gus, by the way, says, Jared is spot on. It was Nagy all along. No one is fooled. But I cannot convince myself this is going to work. Feel like we'll be back here sooner rather than later. Okay, I understand that. I understand you. If they hire Nagy, you're like, oh, God, 2 years from now, we're going to be firing him. That's going to be the same thing. And I would agree with you on that. But that's how I felt when it came to drafting Cam. With all due respect to Cam. And I would love for Cam to shut me up and for Cam to play great and for Cam to be the man. But that's how I felt. I thought, you're taking a quarterback who is not athletically gifted. You're taking a quarterback who doesn't have the elite talent. Again, every single draft guru, every analyst, scouts, they were all saying, Cam is the best of the 25 class, but he's nowhere near Caleb, Jaden, or Drake. And you watch Caleb and Drake, and we saw Jaden last year. You watch those guys play quarterback, and it's like, these are franchise game changers. I don't think Cam's that good. Cam's short. Cam does not have a high-end trait, and he's got bad mechanics. So you're going to take that quarterback who's got a lot of holes in his game, and you're just going to stick him out there with a bad coach who's on the hot seat and a bad roster, which you can't improve because you are using the draft pick on Cam instead of getting more draft picks. I just felt like the whole thinking surrounding Cam was totally flawed. And in hindsight, I was right, because they've already done the things that you try not to do when you've got a young rookie quarterback. So when they drafted Cam, I thought, oh, shit, here we go. And again, it's not a knock on Cam. It's more so taking Cam's raw ability and putting it in the single worst environment to foster that ability. So I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, great. So I have to go through 3 years of Cam. So next year, everybody will say, okay, you know, Cam's doing a little bit of this, Cam's doing a little bit of that. And the next year it'll be like, okay, this is the prove it year for Cam. And I just don't think Cam's going to do it. But at least I know if Nagy's the coach. And look, I'm rooting to be wrong. I'm rooting for Cam Ward to be the single most wrong I've ever been about anything. As right as I've been about Sam Darnold, I hope to be equally as wrong about Cam. But if they hire Nagy, the one good thing is, even if you are in this spot in 2 years or 3 years, it'll be everybody all at one time. It'll be Brinker, it'll be Borgonzi, it'll be Cam, it'll be Nagy. And you'll get to really start over. Start over GM, start over coach, start over quarterback. You will truly get a blank slate. And not, well, we got to give this coach more time. It's not fair. We got to give Rand more time. It's not fair. That I cannot deal with. I just can't. Woo. Which is crazy. Freddie says, sorry about that. Freddie says, hold on a second. Freddie says, new coach may not want Cam as their quarterback. The new coach is going to be Matt Nagy. I promise you, Matt Nagy's not getting the job if he doesn't want Cam as his quarterback. And this is the other thing to remember. I actually did a podcast last year. So during the 2024 season with Matt Collar, a buddy of mine who covers the Vikings. And it was the week that the Titans played the Vikings. And, he brought me on his show. And there wasn't really a lot to talk about with the Titans because they were so bad. We talked about young quarterbacks. And I said, the thing that's crazy about these young quarterbacks is a team drafts a quarterback, then fires the coach because you usually lose with rookie quarterbacks. And every Tom, Dick, and Harry interviewing for that job raises their hand and says, I love them, because they'll do whatever it takes to get the job. Bobby Slowick was interviewing for jobs. Every team that had a quarterback, if he went to the Carolina Panthers with Bryce Young, you bet your ass he should have raised his hand and said, I love him, because eventually you can get rid of him. But you can't coach if you don't get the job. It's like you can't govern if you don't get elected. So I have a pretty good idea that every single person that's interviewed for this job is like, I love Cam Ward. Cam has already proved himself. Stop, y'all. By what metric? Has proven himself. All right, let's get to Vrabel. Congratulations to the great Mike Vrabel for making it to the AFC Championship game. And let's remind everybody that in the 2023 season, Black Friday, the Monday after Thanksgiving, I declared that if I owned the Titans, I would fire Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon at the end of the season. So when people say, how dare the Titans fire the great Mike Vrabel, let me just say, blood is on my hands. I was in favor of moving on from Vrabel. Now, I was not in favor of what they did by promoting Rand Carthon. And after Rand had that infamous ball didn't bounce our way press conference the day after, or the day that Vrabel got fired, and I called Rand incompetent, I mean, people were mad at me. But I thought it was time for Mike Vrabel to go. And what I think is amazing is that nobody will ever have an easier path to the Super Bowl than the New England Patriots have had this season. Vrabel is going to probably win the AFC in his first year in New England because Denver doesn't even have a quarterback on Sunday. And so, as excited as I am to potentially celebrate Sam Darnold making the Super Bowl and me saying, to all you haters like TDG, I was so wrong about Mike Vrabel. It's going to be like, well, what about Mike Vrabel, Jared? You want to fire him and he's in the Super Bowl. And you're right. I might have been wrong about Mike Vrabel. My issue with Mike Vrabel is that I didn't think that Mike Vrabel could be a football CEO, the type of coach who can really run the organization, the CEO type coach who is in charge of everything that has to do with football. I thought Vrabel was arrogant. I thought he was short-sighted. And quite frankly, I thought his biggest failing was his loyalty to people who were loyal to him. Not loyal to the team, loyal to him. I didn't think he could be like Bill Parcells. And yet, he's got a lot of Parcells in him. I didn't think he can do what Andy Reid does. And yet, he's having a lot of success in year one. And maybe I was wrong about Vrabel. Maybe everything that all the national people said about Vrabel was true. An unbelievable leader, a great football guy, a guru. But there's two things that I think need to be addressed when it comes to the Titans' decision to move on from Vrabel. The first is this. Let's say the Titans hadn't fired Mike Vrabel. Do you really think Mike Vrabel would be in the AFC Championship game with Will Levis as a starting quarterback? Because if they had kept Vrabel after 2023, that's what it would have been, right? Like it would have been Levis at quarterback and Tim Kelly as the offensive coordinator. And do you really think that team is going to the AFC Championship game? And you can't tell me that, well, J-Rob screwed up in the draft, and so the team wouldn't have been good enough. You can't tell me that because the Patriots have gone 0-4 in a lot of these drafts too. So I have a hard time getting on board with that. With Tim Kelly as the OC, with Will Levis as the quarterback, what's the best Vrabel would have done? 6 wins? 7 wins? Again, I don't know. Maybe Vrabel is so good that Vrabel would have won 13 games with Will Levis as his quarterback. I just have a hard time believing that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is where I do feel like it's not an apples to apples kind of comparison. I did want Vrabel out of here. I thought it was time for Vrabel to go. I thought Vrabel had worn out his welcome in the organization. I thought Vrabel had really pissed off the owner, which you can't do. I understand she's nuts and not a good owner, and she didn't manage him well. But at the same time, you can't just antagonize the owner. But I never, ever advocated for them choosing Ran Carthon over Vrabel. I begged them to fire both of them. And when they promoted Ran Carthon, and the reason I said I'd fire both of them is the way I looked at it was Ran was hired to kind of shotgun the general manager position with Vrabel, and they were hired to work together. It was a flawed concept from the start, which I called out at that point in time. It was a flawed theory, but that's what he was hired to do. So if you fire Mike Vrabel and you let Ran Carthon pick his coach, you're promoting him. And I didn't think that he had done anything that made me think he was worthy of a promotion. They promoted him anyways. And I think the reason you're in the hole is not because you fired Mike Vrabel. I think it's because you promoted Ran Carthon, and he was the most incompetent general manager maybe in the history of the NFL. So Amy choosing Ran over Vrabel, which is not something I would have done. And if Amy said to me, you got to either pick one or the other, I would have picked Vrabel over Ran because I knew Ran was incompetent. And I got called racist for that, but again, I think history has proven me correct. The decision to choose Ran Carthon over Vrabel will go down, again, something I never advocated for, will go down as one of the single stupidest decisions in NFL history. Ran Carthon versus Vrabel. Whew. That one's tough. And Amy has got to be feeling it. I have a little empathy because that's got to be tough to take. And then finally, I actually do want to get to that game because I think there was some good news. Good news for the Titans, good news for Amy. Because while it's embarrassing that the Titans fired Vrabel, and Vrabel right away is in the AFC Championship game, and Vrabel is probably going to the Super Bowl, and here we are talking about Matt Nagy and Robert Saleh. God, that's embarrassing. I actually think there was some good news that came out of the game yesterday between the Texans and the Patriots, because C.J. Stroud is cooked in Houston. I don't know if C.J. Stroud can come back from what happened yesterday. And I don't know what the hell happened to C.J. Stroud, because 2 years ago, C.J. Stroud was that dude. But he sucks. And he's getting worse every single week. I'm watching C.J. Stroud yesterday, and I'm like, take him out of the game. I said to Corey Curtis at the Borgonzi press conference before the start of the playoffs, I said, this is going to sound crazy because C.J. Stroud is their franchise, but for this Texan team, as good of a defense as they had, I said they're better off with Davis Mills as their quarterback, because they can go to Davis Mills and they can say, Davis, you play like Trent Dilfer. Got it? And he can say, yes, sir. Run, punt, drop it off to the tight end, maybe throw a ball to an open receiver down the field. If it's not there, don't force it. Punting is your friend. When you've got that defense, punting is your friend. I don't know if you could tell C.J. Stroud that, because you're going to go give C.J. Stroud a contract for about $250 million, and the last thing you want is for him to have no confidence in his game. And how does he get no confidence in his game? You have the coach tell him, we don't have confidence in you throwing the ball down the field. So, when it comes to Stroud, I don't know how he got the way he got, but he sucks right now. He sucked last week against the Steelers. He sucked most of the season. He was so bad yesterday. It was painful. I texted a former head coach in the league before the pick six that really changed the game, and I said, when do you take Stroud out of the game? He goes into the game last week, and he turns the ball over a bunch, but the Steelers can't do anything on offense, and so the Texans' defense blows him out, but he was god-awful in that Steelers game. And I'm like, when do you get to the point to where you say, we're trying to win the Super Bowl, and we have a defense that's capable of winning the Super Bowl, and there's not a Mahomes that we have to go through. Josh Allen got eliminated yesterday, so there's not this elite quarterback we've got to go through. If we make it to the Super Bowl, we're going to play Sam Darnold or Caleb Williams or Matthew Stafford. So let's ride the defense. Like, let's do it. Like, when is that? Where is that moment? And I texted that former head coach, and the former head coach didn't text me back. And then as soon as I'm watching Marcus Jones run the ball into the end zone on the pick six, the former head coach texted me back and said, now. And D'Amico, and I don't know if D'Amico wasn't allowed to take the quarterback out. I don't know if D'Amico is just, I'm not taking him out because the second I take him out, he's going to lose faith in me, and I don't want to I don't know. But I think D'Amico might have lost the team yesterday, because every motherfucker on that team, all 52 guys that are not named C.J. Stroud, must have looked over there at their coach and said, what the fuck? This guy's costing us the Super Bowl. And so I don't know what the hell happened to C.J. Stroud over the last couple of years, but he is donezo. There is no coming back from that yesterday. And it's funny because I compared C.J. Stroud to Mariota when he was coming out for the draft. And I was like, kind of reminds me of Mariota. His stats are a lot like Mariota's. I feel like he's physically gifted in certain ways, but not with the cannon laser beam arm. The accuracy isn't perfect. He won a bunch of games in college, but he also had the best players around him in college. I just felt like I was looking at Mariota. And then after that first year, I was like, well, I guess I got that wrong. CJ Stroud is the man. I felt that way after his first year. I was like, CJ Stroud is that dude. And now he reminds me a lot of Mariota, where I don't know what happened, because at a point in time, Mariota was really, really good his second year in the league, and then he broke his leg, and I don't know what happened to Stroud. But they've already changed a coordinator, and they changed a play caller, and they're probably going to change a play caller again, and they're going to, just like Mariota. But he's done. As far as being an elite quarterback in the league, it ain't going to happen with CJ Stroud. And DeMeco Ryans, in my opinion, just shit away a Super Bowl, or at least shit away a Super Bowl defense, because he didn't have the balls or the authority to take CJ Stroud out of the game. I'm telling you right now, if Davis Mills plays quarterback for the Houston Texans yesterday, I think the Texans win. But nope, can't put the team first. Have to put the quarterback first, because we drafted him with the second pick, and we're going to give him $200 million, and all other 52 guys be damned. And what's crazy, I think Vrabel would have taken Stroud out of the game. If you had flip-flopped the coaches and Mike Vrabel had been on the sideline yesterday watching CJ Stroud just gift the game to the other team, after CJ tried to give the game to the Steelers the week before with, again, not a great backup, but a competent backup who is 3-0 this year as their starter in Davis Mills on the bench in the AFC Championship game, where the Super Bowl defense is starting to slip away from you, I think you would have seen Vrabel bent over at the waist, what I call the toilet Vrabel, where he looks like he's about to throw up after a long night of drinking into the pot. And he would have been bent over at the waist, and he would have sent Davis Mills in there to start the second half. Because, again, I don't think an owner, even Robert Kraft, could tell Mike Vrabel, hey, man, you got to stick with the quarterback that is going to get your team beat. When you've got a quarterback you might be able to win this game with on the bench, we have to stick with the guy who's going to get us beat because we drafted him number 2 overall. I don't think Vrabel could have done that. DeMeco was never going to take Stroud out of the game. And I wonder if DeMeco is going to lose his team, because they look at him like, we have one of the greatest defenses ever, and you won't make the switch at quarterback. That defense was awesome. I mean, they turned the ball over like 6 times, and they gave up something like 8 points off the turnovers. And I think that was a pick 6. James says, no way Vrabel would have benched C.J. Stroud. He stuck with Tannehill in the Bengals playoff game. I think the thing to be reminded about Tannehill in the Bengals playoff game, Tannehill had 3 interceptions. The 3rd interception came on his last throw of the game. So, yes, he had 3 interceptions. Stroud had 4 interceptions in the first half. I think if Tannehill had thrown 4 picks in the first half, Vrabel would have pulled him. And that was with Logan Woodside as the backup, not Davis Mills. Kong says, rumor was C.J. Stroud was originally Mike Vrabel's quarterback that he wanted the year Stroud came out. See, now that is true. Remember the whole thing with Diana, and the Titans were going to do anything they could to trade up, and remember that. And how crazy people got about that draft night, and they were going to go get Stroud, and then all of a sudden the Texans decided to go get Stroud, and then they traded up for Anderson, and who knows how it got to Diana. Most of us think it was Vrabel. Who knows? But isn't it hilarious that Vrabel's guy, C.J. Stroud, is the one that just gift-wrapped him a trip to the AFC Championship game? Unbelievable. It's unbelievable how the world works. That Mike Vrabel is going to an AFC Championship game because the quarterback he desperately wanted to draft, he couldn't draft. We think because he ran his mouth to Diana Rossini. And that guy is why he's in the AFC Championship game. And why he's probably going to win the AFC. Crazy. Just freaking crazy how this league works. I had a math teacher in school. His name was Mr. Davis. He relocated back out. He was from the Bay Area. I think he relocated back out there 15, 20 years ago. Have no idea what happened to the guy from the last day I saw him. But Mr. Davis told me what goes around comes around in sports. He said, what goes around always comes around. Buffalo has this unbelievable comeback against the Oilers, and then years later, the Titans pull off the Music City Miracle. Vrabel desperately wanted C.J. Stroud, didn't get C.J. Stroud, got fired. I think what did Vrabel in was that loss at home to the Texans when they were wearing the Oiler throwbacks and they lost to Case Keenum. Houston wins the division, Vrabel gets fired. And now that quarterback that Vrabel desperately wanted and didn't get on draft night is now the quarterback who gift wraps Vrabel a trip to the AFC Championship game. Unfreaking believable. This league, it's some of the greatest theater. I watch these games and I'm like, God, I love football. I absolutely love it. How about that throw by Caleb last night? Oh my God. Whoa! That throw from Caleb. And before you tell me Cam can do that, show me where Cam threw it 52 air yards in freezing conditions on a 4th down in the playoffs. Whoa! It's too bad because if the Bears had won, that would have been remembered as the throw. And instead, it's just something that 4 years from now will bring, hey, remember that throw, Caleb? Oh, yeah, that was a great one. And then you'll forget about it. PK has a new story out at paulkaharski.com. Here's a question before we end the stream. Should we read it? I have not read this. Paul put it out there 33 seconds ago. It's PK thoughts as the Titans near a coaching decision. Should we read that or should we not? If I read the whole thing, Paul get mad because, again, he's got a paywall up and it should be fair to him. Number one, Paul says, yes, Sean McDermott is a stop the process guy. As in, hey, we have this process. We've got our finalists coming. Stop. Number two, Mike McCarthy standing. PK says, quote, Mike McCarthy met with the Titans before his official interview. A to Z Sports reported it, and Adam Schefter put time and place on it, December in Green Bay. Then he was here for his first official interview Friday, Saturday. Many who are rooting for him or insist on giving him more weight to that. Then the Titans have other people in Nashville now at a time when hiring is more likely to occur. Again, I think it's obvious that Paul's reporting has said over the weekend, they're not going to hire McCarthy. Like, they're not going to hire him. I don't understand why they're not interested in McCarthy, but it feels like they're not going to hire him. Paul says the floodgates are about to open, as in coordinators will stay in place, but a vast majority of the 10 offensive coordinator jobs, 10 defensive coordinator jobs, and 10 special teams coordinator jobs will churn, and then position coaches will follow. He said that he does not think the Titans are cheap in this department as they are perceived to be by the public, but that they need to go ahead and get out in front of this. And then the final thing says, trusting Mike Borgonzi. Paul says, I've encouraged people not to go crazy over Mike Borgonzi. The tendency amongst Titans fans is to be all the way in or all the way out. There's no need to jump into in J-Rob we trust or let Rand cook to I believe in the Borgonzi scheme. Was that like Ponzi scheme? You people. By the way, I felt like John Robinson earned that trust when he, took a 3-win team and they went 9 wins in the first year and they went to the playoffs in the second year. But maybe I'm wrong. Paul says, Borgonzi has a small sample size with a lot of good indicators, starting with the fact that he makes sense when he talks, which has become too rare amongst power brokers in the organization where the owner doesn't speak at all. Stop. Paul put out a story last week about Brian Callahan, and he said, we should not compare this hire to being better than Brian Callahan. It's easy for this hire to be better than Brian Callahan. We should compare it to Mike Vrabel. Shouldn't I ask for the same thing? If you're saying the good indicators for Mike Borgonzi is he makes more sense than Rand Carthon, who was totally full of shit every time he talked, or Chad Brinker, who is totally full of shit, well, that doesn't really say much. But are the signs more encouraging than J-Rob? I don't think so. Paul continues. But if you're trusting him at this point, then I think you have to see what he does and hear his rationale. It does seem fair to like him if he picks someone you like and not like him if he picks someone you don't. I'll have a big initial reaction to the new coach. Then I'll give him a clean slate and judge him on his work. And his work will boil down to whether he wins or not. And that's over some time, not just in his first month. Here's what I would say to them. Again, I was thinking there might be some news in there as far as the search is concerned. Doesn't feel like there's any news in there. Here's what I'll say on the trusting Mike Borgonzi front. I think there's a lot of red flags with Borgonzi. His resume with Kansas City as the assistant general manager is that of somebody who deserves an opportunity to be a general manager. The same way that a good coordinator of a good team deserves an opportunity to be a head coach. Chris Shula. Chris Shula, I guess, has earned the right to be a head coach. We have no idea if he's any good or not, but he's earned the right to be interviewed and to have a possibility to get a head coaching job. Jeff Hafley, same thing. But in the first year, Mike Borgonzi did not improve the team by a single win. Not one. I want you to think about that. And Easton came on last week and was like, well, you're parroting this, but they said they weren't going to be good. They said they weren't going to be good. But they also didn't say they're going to be the same as they were the year before. And that's what they were. Again, he drafted one guy that right now we think can play, and that's DK. We don't know if Cam can play. We don't know if Oladipo can play. We don't know if Winston can stay healthy. We don't know if Jackson Slater, Marcus Harris, we don't know if those guys can play. Gunnar Helm's a backup. DK. That's the one guy who it feels like, okay, he drilled it. But Rand Carthon did the same thing with Jarvis Brownlee. I think what we need to do is stop ignoring the red flags with Mike Borgonzi because we want Mike Borgonzi to be the guy, and we need to see if Mike Borgonzi actually had a real plan for developing Cam Ward and turning Cam Ward into a franchise quarterback or not. Mike says J-Rob had a terrible first year record-wise too. No, he didn't. They were 9-7. When you inherit the number one pick in the draft and you go 9-7, that's good. People are crazy. But, I mean, look, if my life depended on it, in or out on Borgonzi, his actions so far this year would tell me out. But it's early. He drafted Cam. He believes in Cam. He said there was a plan for Cam. Let's see if Cam makes it or not. I hope he does. I don't think he will, but I hope he does. But I did laugh at Tic Tac Titan this week that was like, if he hires Nagy, I'm out. I'm like, what? How does that make any sense? All right, that's it for us. We're out of here. We will be live tomorrow at 2 o'clock unless there is news that breaks before then, and then, of course, we'll be live. Enjoy the championship game tonight. I think Indiana in a landslide. That will do it for us today on the program. Stillman & Company. We'll see everybody whenever news breaks or live tomorrow, 2 o'clock, 440 Sports.